Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Techie webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is Build a solid identity data foundation using Tivoli Directory Server. Our guest speaker today is Mr. Chandrajit G. Joshi, Tivoli Directory Server Development, IBM India Software Lab. Chandrajit is a part of Tivoli Directory Server Development team at India Software Lab, Pune. He has more than 14 years of industry experience in analysis, debugging, design and development of system software and middleware products, out of which about 7 years is on identity management products. As part of his job, he is involved with development team in planning, architecture, design and development for new releases of TDS. He also works with internal and external customers to help resolve the product issues. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Mr. Joshi.
Can you give me the presentation control?
Already given you that.
Can you all see the presentation? I hope you're able to see the the presentation on my screen.
Yeah, it's visible.
So thanks for the introduction. Okay, thanks for the introduction. And in today's session, I'm going to talk about Tivoli Directory Server, which is an LDAP protocol implementation from IBM, and it is a foundational product in number of IBM products, including identity and access management, where it is an integral part and is bundled as bundled product with number of identity and access management products. Please take a note of the disclaimer statements. So the agenda of this session would be I'm going to talk about the identity and access family in general, a very brief talk on that. What are the products in the identity and access stack, and where does TDS figure? And then we'll touch base on various features of TDS at a high level, the capabilities of TDS, and then we'll look at certain customer scenarios. I'll not be able to disclose the customer names, but these are the actual customer scenarios where the TDS is deployed. as we all know, that IBM is a major player in security domain, and it has a number of product offerings in different pillars of security. There are four primary areas where IBM offers security products, and those are people, where the identities and the roles, access, permissions, authorities of the people come into picture. So the products that manages these aspects of the security. It has product offerings in data. So basically we are looking at data at rest. For example, data stored in database. So how secure is your data in your database? So IBM has product offerings in this space. Applications, for example, how secure are your applications from hacking point of view? Are there vulnerabilities such as SQL injection or cross-site scripting? So IBM offers products which analyzes the applications and find out the application vulnerabilities, so that the product teams can go back and fix the vulnerabilities and the infrastructure security, right? So these are the four major pillars in the IBM security system. The area that I'm going to talk about is people, right? So when we talk about people, for example, a person joins an organization, an employee record is created. That employee record defines the identity of the employee. With that identity, based on the roles possessed by the identity, the employee gets different authorities, permissions, or accesses. These permissions decide which area, which systems, which all systems the employee can access, and what view in the application the employee would have access to. So there are few products from IBM which automates the creation, modification, recertification of user identities throughout their entire life cycle. So basically, there are product offerings which completely automates the different phases of the identities in its life cycle. So this product offering is called as IBM Security Identity Manager, and TDS is part of this offering. The Security Identity Manager also deals with identity control, including role management and auditing. So the different actions that are performed on the Identity Manager, those are audited. The product audits those actions, and there are basically it provides the capabilities from role management point of view to manage the authorities and permissions that the person can get, and all these actions are audited. There's another product which is IBM Security Access Manager, which basically deals with single sign-on. It automates the single sign-on across different systems in the IT environment, systems and applications obviously, and it also has capabilities dealing with entitlement management for fine-grained access enforcement by the user. So let's look at the different products involved in the identity and access stack. The stack basically starts from the bottom, which consists of directory services, right? Which consists of Federated Identity Manager, Directory Server, the Tivoli Directory Server, which this session is all about. There is an directory integrator, which basically is a product which can be used in the use cases such as synchronization and consolidation of data from different data sources. Then up the chain we have access management and identity management. So access in identity management space we have the identity lifecycle management and privilege identity management. And in the access management space we have, we already talked about that, the single sign-on, the security policy manager and the access manager, right? So the point I'm trying to make is Tivoli Directory Server is part of the standard directory services, which is a foundational product in the entire identity and access management. And not only that, it is also a product which is exploited by multiple other IBM products such as WebSphere or WebSphere products and Lotus products. With that, let's look at the capabilities of Tivoli Directory Server. The key feature that TDS provides is that it is an LDAP implementation. It is an LDAP version 3 implementation from IBM. It provides industry standard interface to the industry standard LDAP based applications, which means that if you have an application which is built to talk to any LDAP v3 compliant directory, then that application will be able to communicate with TDS without any change, without any customization. It has high performance LDAP proxy, which is typically used in the scalability and load balancing and failover scenarios. TDS also has a reliable IBM DB2, which it uses for storing its data. And as we all know that DB2 is known for massive scalability and unsurpassed reliability. Right? It also offers capabilities such as storing groups with hundreds of thousands of members. It also groups can be having, as I said, hundreds and thousands of members, which can be static members or dynamic members, and it also provides ability to store nested groups. It provides robust replication capability for both peer-to-peer or master replica, gateway replication. So we will dive deep into all these capabilities as we progress. It provides management and usability with its rich web-based interface, which is known as web administration tool, which eases the management of your directory topology. it provides 64-bit client support, which typically is necessary to run multiple directories on multiple directory instances on a single machine, right? As I said, it provides tight integration with IBM operating system, which is AIX. So it comes bundled with AIX, and you can configure AIX to authenticate on directory when user logs in on the system. It comes with WebSphere and the identity and access products like IBM Security Identity Manager and other security products. Right? It provides certified openness, which I talked about a little bit, which is it provides an open interface, industry standard interface for the application capable of talking to any LDAP v3 compliant directory. It has extensible, dynamic and extensible schema, which means it comes with out-of-the-box schema. But if you want to extend that, you could do that without restarting the server. And it has support for strong authentication. It has SSL and TLS support. Provides SSL authentication mechanisms like Digest MD5, and it also provides support for cross authentication. So let's briefly talk about what is LDAP, right? What is a directory? So as we know, LDAP is a directory server is where you store the data in the form of tree structure. You have a base entry which has child entries, and each child entry could have its own child entries and so on. So it forms a complete directory structure. The idea behind the LDAP directory is for each entry in the directory could have multiple attributes and values, right? And instead of having different applications having their own directories for authentication and authorization, there could be a single directory having consolidated data, each entry having multiple consolidated attributes and values, and all of those applications communicating with that single consolidated directory, right? So you could have a telephone directory application which could be interested only in the attributes like surname, telephone number of the user, and first name of the user, right? You could have an email application which is only interested in the first name and the surname of the user and the email ID. Or you could have some web-based application which wants to authenticate the application users with the directory. So it will be interested in the user ID and the password, right? So the business value is multiple applications sharing the same user information repository, rather than having each application having its own directory, which complicates the manageability and administration. So TDS provides multiple features like proxy server, replication, which can be used to have a complete end-to-end solution, which will provide you our enterprise directory, which will provide a load balanced, fault tolerant, and high performant enterprise directory, right? Um, talking about LDAP proxy, as I said, it provides massive scalability up to hundreds and millions of entries at no additional cost. Now, what does that mean? There are directories from the other vendors where the licensing terms and condition mandates that if you go on storing more and more users, the licensing cost goes up. But in IBM, we don't believe that kind of licensing agreement. What we say is you just purchase one license of TDS, and regardless of how many entries you store, how many objects you store in the directory, you don't have to pay any extra cost. So that's what it means. I mean, if you purchase the proxy license, with that license you'll be able to scale your enterprise directory, starting maybe from hundreds of thousands to up to multi-million objects. I talked about the open architecture of TDS. We provide broad platform support, which includes all the widely used operating systems such as AIX, all flavors of Linux, Windows, and the Z operating system. I also talked about DB2 being the data store for TDS, and TDS is utilized by a number of products in other IBM brands such as Tivoli, Lotus, and WebSphere. And most of the use cases revolve around authentication and authorization, TDS being the user registry. So let's look at the high-level TDS features, starting with TDS proxy. I talked about proxy. The typical use case is if your enterprise has, say, 500,000 employees and say a few million subscribers, right? So the idea could be to store all of that data in one single directory instance. But as your enterprise expands, the subscriber base and the employee base expands, goes on increasing, and then a single directory server instance may not be sufficient to hold all that data. So in order to keep up to the performance requirements and scalability requirements, you would have to partition your data. TDS proxy enables you to do this. For example, as of today, you have 5 million objects to be stored in one single directory server instance. Going forward, you want to store 15 million, then obviously 15 million you can't store in single directory instance. You would probably require 3 directory instances, and in that case, you would put a TDS proxy in front. So the TDS clients will communicate with TDS proxy, which is a listener process. And since you have used TDS proxy to partition the data across multiple server instances, TDS proxy will exactly know where the user resides. It will communicate to the backend directory server instance and fetch the data for you and complete the request path, request and response path. Right? So the way it goes is directory client communicates with TDS proxy in turn communicates with the backend directory instances, and it gets the data and responds to the client. There are customer deployments where proxy is being used for a directory topology where you have consolidated more than 100 million entries. I know of a customer which is a US based customer that has 500 million entries partitioned across multiple directory instances, and they are using proxy to do the load balancing and failover and so on. So just to reiterate the point, proxy proxy is used for very large directories when you are looking to store multi-million entries in the directory. So you would typically partition the data and put a directory proxy instance in front. In the proxy environment, with the benefits of this proxy topology is you no longer require referrals. You have seamless and unified authentication. You don't have to as an end application, you don't have to talk to individual directory server instances. You just need to talk to proxy and it will take care of the rest. And group membership is handled properly, which means that you could have users in one directory instance and group where the user is member of in another directory instance. Proxy takes care of these situations, which means it determines the group membership even though the objects are residing in a different directory instance. We talked about proxy. Another important feature is replication, which typically comes into picture when you want fault tolerance or failover, right? So a typical replication topology would consist, that is shown here on this slide, would typically consist of multiple peers which are writable servers, and each peer server can have can be replicating to certain number of read-only replicas. All of these servers will have the same data. So the data synchronization is the key. And the how the request would handle is external updates coming to directory would come to some kind of load balancer, which could be a TDS proxy as well, and that load balancer would route the update to one of the peer servers. Peer server will handle the update, it will update the data, and additionally it will replicate the data to the other peer server, and it will also replicate that data, that update, to all other read-only replicas to ensure that data synchronization is maintained. So this is about how the updates will be handled. Now, because all the servers have same data, read request can be routed to any of them. So in terms of updates, if one peer server goes down, another peer server is available for serving the updates and also replicating to other servers in the replication topology. While the another peer server that is not available and has gone down, is not available, then the peer that is getting the updates will queue up all these updates, and when the server comes up, it will replicate all those queued updates to the server, right? So this will ensure the data synchronization between the peer servers. It will also ensure that the updates are handled in a fault tolerant way. In terms of read requests, any of the server goes down, you have other 5 server to serve the request. So the job of load balancer is to figure out which server to route the request to based on whether it is update or read request. Now, as I said, load balancer could be proxy as well, right? So that's how proxy and replication complement each other. They provide, so the replication topology that we have seen, which consisting of peers and replicas, is a server cluster, and proxy is basically an interface or an abstraction layer between this server cluster and the end clients. Well, with proxy and replication working together, they provide complete load balance, fault tolerant, and high performance directory, enterprise directory. Replication being providing the fault tolerance, and proxy providing the load balancing. Now, going back, if we go back to the earlier slide of proxy, then we talked about 3 different directory server instances. Each of these directory server instances could be a server cluster. So in itself, there could be multiple peers and read-only replicas in each of the server cluster, and that server cluster in itself will be a fault tolerant and load balanced directory instance, right? So proxy and replication work together. This slide shows how we have gone improving the performance of TDS starting from version 6.0 to version 6.3, which is the current available version in the market. In 6.0, we introduced bulk load, which improved the bulk load of the directory data. In 6.1, we introduced performance tuning tool, which is typically used in tuning of the performance parameters of TDS and the underlying DB2. We also introduced certain proxy server performance improvements. In 6.2, we added more parameters to performance tuning tool and redesigned the user interface. And in 6.3, we picked up the latest performance improvements as provided by DB2 version 9.7, which is basically bundled with 6.3 version of TDS. And these are primarily the buffer pool enhancements of DB2. So with customers looking to move to multiple servers being run on single hardware, TDS is supported on these virtualized environments, including VMware. Another important feature TDS provides is pass-through authentication. Right? So let me give you a use case where pass-through authentication can be used. You have a merger and acquisition scenario where one organization is acquiring another. The organization that is acquiring has enterprise directory based on TDS, and the organization being acquired has enterprise directory as Active Directory, right? So the organization that is acquiring wants all the users and groups to be migrated from Active Directory to TDS, but the requirement is this migration has to happen seamlessly. In the sense, the users in the Active Directory should be able to continue to authenticate and be authorized in the various applications and systems as they are currently. So that's where pass-through authentication comes into picture. You could have server X, which could be TDS, and server Y, which could be an Active Directory. So the client application will communicate with server X. If server X does not have that data, it will first try to verify the credentials from its own data. But if the data is not there, if the user credentials are not there, it will authenticate to the other external server on behalf of the client, and this external server is called as pass-through server. And this authentication with the pass-through server will be done on behalf of the client through pass-through authentication interface. Now this pass-through server could be Active Directory or any other LDAP v3 compliant directory. It could also be another TDS directory server instance. So the client applications will be able to continue to authenticate on the application, on the various applications and systems seamlessly, and the migration can happen while this is going on without disrupting the regular user operations. With that, I'm going to talk about certain typical customer scenarios, and these are the real life scenarios. I have a couple of them with me. So in this, I'll talk about typical customer TDS deployments and certain success stories. But to start, I'd like to talk about how there are different ways to purchase or exploit TDS. Right? As I mentioned earlier, TDS is a default directory for different IBM products such as WebSphere Application Server, Portal Server, IBM Security Identity Manager and Access Manager, and it is also a default directory that comes bundled with the AIX operating system. Now these different product environments exploit great capabilities out of TDS, right? And all these capabilities are embedded for free. Once you purchase any of these products, TDS comes bundled as a free. You don't have to pay anything extra. However, the use of TDS has to be restricted in the context of the product that is bundling TDS, right? You cannot use that TDS for any other purpose beyond the use cases of the bundling product. That's one restriction. Another restriction is that if customers want support for TDS proxy or white pages application, then they have to purchase a full TDS license. So the selling opportunity of TDS are a couple, right? One is where you want to exploit TDS's proxy capabilities or white pages application, or if you want to extend the use case of TDS beyond its use with the product which has embedded TDS. In either of these two cases, you must purchase TDS license. So with that, I'll talk about briefly of international hospitality conglomerate, which is one of the biggest customers of TDS, and in fact, it also has a number of other IBM products like IBM Access Manager, WebSphere Application Server. They also have systems running with AIX, the Tivoli Directory Integrator, and there are certain custom applications like HR and financial applications are communicating with TDS. So this slide gives you the application landscape with that in the IT environment with the customer, right? So Access Manager being using TDS for authentication and authorization. So it's primarily a read use. Similarly, WebSphere and AIX and Certificate Authority using TDS for authentication and authorization. For AIX, it is read-write because users will be authenticating and they will also be updating user passwords, so which is an update operation. TDI using TDS for authentication and other custom applications or other external applications which are non-IBM applications, typically HR and financial, using TDS for authentication and authorization. So again, a read-centric operation. So with that application landscape being in picture, let's look at the replication diagram. It's a pretty complex replication topology they have for TDS. So you have enterprise LDAP servers, which consist of multi-master topology, and you have different subtrees for PKI. Each system having master and replica instances, and there is a complex setup of overall enterprise LDAP directory and PKI LDAP directory. Multiple other applications like Access Manager and WebSphere talking to this directory, enterprise directory servers. The other customer scenario is a success story. In fact, it's about an international banking corporation. So they have multiple products from IBM, such as DB2, Access Manager, and TDS. So the problem with them was they had very old versions of these products, all deployed on 32-bit hardware, which ultimately resulted into diminishing system performance, and this entire environment was highly unstable, leading to certain server crashes also, and their net banking portal going down for a few days. So the IBM's accelerated value program came into picture, helped them plan and implement their product upgrade in terms of both hardware and software. So the solution that was proposed was to migrate the hardware from the existing 32-bit to IBM Power 740 AIX, which runs the IBM AIX operating system, hosting the Tivoli Access Manager for e-business version 6.1 and TDS version 6.2, storing its data in DB2 for AIX version 9.5. Right. This improved the overall online banking performance by up to 300%, which was a huge improvement on the existing performance numbers. It also helped in reducing the response time in their service request module by 67%, a reduction from 21 to 7 seconds. It also helped in reducing the amount of downtime required during the occasional planned maintenance periods from 6 hours to only 1 hour. Right? So that there was a huge improvement on that. And through server optimization, there was a reduction in the effective PV use by approximately 31%. So I'll also briefly talk about the TDS and TDI solution, and what all scenarios these two products can play together. Right? LDAP sync is a very good example. So this LDAP sync is basically a TDI based Tivoli Directory Integrator based solution, which we have recently published on the asset library. This solution helps in the scenarios where customers want to migrate the data from any given directory server, be it Sun Directory or Oracle or Active Directory, and it basically migrates the data, the users and all other data from that directory server to TDS, right? And it migrates and synchronizes the data. So there are two things: the migration of the data and real-time synchronization as well. So the strategy is, as I said, enable customers to migrate from their existing directory server infrastructure to TDS. Solution being very simple to install and deploy. The two-step process: one is configuration step and runtime step, which enables users to effectively get going in just 10 minutes. And absolutely no TDI skills required. It's basically a command line solution which can be run by anybody with certain parameters. Some important references for you to note. Down below there is a link for LDAP sync solution as well. So you could download and try it out. With that, we are at the end of the session. If there are any questions, I can take those.
Mr. Chandrajit, I have assigned you some questions.
So the question is, what is the data that is stored in DB2? TDS uses DB2 as its data store. So whatever you want to store in the TDS, that ultimately gets stored in DB2, right? When you store your users or group information on TDS using certain command line utilities, TDS actually stores that data in DB2. So TDS uses DB2 as its database, and this data is stored in such a fashion that TDS, if a read request is performed on TDS, then a tree-like structure, the data is presented in a tree-like structure, right? And that's the primary use case of any LDAP directory. So that's where DB2 comes into picture. So the use of PKI LDAP server, I talked about the customer scenario, right? About a customer in hospitality management, and it's an international customer where who are using PKI LDAP server. So there are certificate authorities that are talking to TDS, and they are doing certificate-based authentication on TDS. So I talked about various authentication mechanisms provided by TDS, right? One of them is certificate-based authentication as well. So these certificate authorities are authenticating on TDS for certificate-based authentication, and that's where the PK and LDAP servers come into picture, where the user certificates are stored in those directory servers instances. Another question is, what is the use of DB2? Is it used for backup? So I think I covered that in the question 1, where I talked about DB2 being the database used by TDS. TDS is an application, is a application developed in C++. That application stores its data of users and groups and any other information that you have, any other data that you have stored in TDS, that actually gets stored in DB2. So TDS as an application is using DB2 as its database. So it is not used for backup, but you could take a backup of your TDS data. So TDS provides utilities to take the backup of the TDS data, which comprises of the configuration files, schema files, and the actual data that is stored in DB2. So in an instance of data being lost, you could always restore the data from your backup data, right? But DB2 is primarily used as a database, where the actual data of TDS is stored. Another question is, if we want to make our employees to learn Tivoli skills, where we will get the training from IBM Bangalore. So I think if you go to IBM's website, I'm sure you will find a training link over there. You could go to IBM India page, and I think there is a link to training department, right? There are contacts provided. You could always talk to those contacts and figure out what are the different ways of getting the Tivoli trainings. Another question is, you said that this TDS can be used beyond and how to buy a full version. What do you mean by beyond, and is it related to operating system or some other database? So what I mean is, take for instance IBM Security Identity Manager, right? And I also talked about Identity Manager using TDS as its database. So the Identity Manager stores the information about people, users, accounts, roles, this managed services, policies. All this information is stored in TDS. So when you buy Identity Manager license, TDS comes as a free. So you are entitled to use TDS that comes bundled with Identity Manager in the context of Identity Manager only. So you could store the data related to Identity Manager only in the TDS, that has come with Identity Manager. But now you want to build an enterprise directory for your organization, then you cannot make use of this TDS that has come with Identity Manager. That's what I mean. Because now you want to extend the use case of TDS beyond the use case of storing the Identity Manager data, right? Because enterprise directory is something outside of the Identity Manager use case, and for that you will have to buy a full license of TDS. Is TDS a server operating system? Well, it's not an operating system, but as I said, it's an infrastructure product. It's a protocol implementation from IBM. It implements the LDAP protocol, lightweight directory access protocol. So it basically provides the server that implements LDAP, and the use cases are to build your enterprise directories where different applications in your IT environment can authenticate or authorize by communicating with this directory. The next question is, if we are using DB2 to store, that means data doesn't store in TDS. It is only a front-end application. Yeah, that's right. I mean, every application will need some kind of database where it can store its data. It is correct. TDS is a front-end. It's an application which is storing the data about anything that you want to store in TDS, actually getting stored in DB2. So I think we are at the end of the questions. If you have any more questions, feel free to send it to the moderator.
Well, those were the only questions we had, Mr. Chandrajeet. Thank you so much for the insightful presentation. I'm really thankful to you for conducting this webinar. I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of this session would be available on techgeek.com by tomorrow. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.